Good morning to another of our online seminars. This time we will talk about sustainable energy transition behaviors. This is important because we know what we can do as industry, but we can't change, at least from top to bottom, immediately the whole value chain. And this has to be done by other parties in the value chain, by policymakers, by consultants, by installers, by administrators, and so on. So there are quite a few people that have to look at a necessary change in behavior, and that's what we want to talk about today. With me, I have quite a sophisticated panel of experts. I have Oliver Spitzer, who is the managing partner of September Online, a strategy and research consultancy based in Cologne. I've met him actually on the train, and it was the most obscure encounter because he said he was working for an industry that I probably have never heard of. You can imagine how that went. It was very funny. Then we have Edmund Hunt. Edmund works for Energy Systems Catapult, which I appreciate a lot for their input to the industry, for their practical advice, and for the good ideas, for the good inspiration. He's leading the digital energy services team, and he's working to provide input and advice to industry stakeholders when it comes to digital solutions and new solutions. He has been responsible for the strategy and roadmap of E.ON's connected home products and innovation trials. Welcome, Edmund. And I should have also said that Oliver is a psychologist. So we are trying to bring in different expertise into the discussion today. And then we have Niels Ladevogt. He's an engineer. I must say we have many of these, but nonetheless, it's good to have engineers in the European Commission that understand the legislation that they are writing about. And I was very happy that Niels agreed to join us today, because it also shows that there is an engineer that has an interest in broadening his perspective, and also taking into account the psychological aspects of the energy transition that we are trying to move all together. Niels is the team leader for product efficiency in the European Commission. He's a long-standing expert. He has been working on the Renewable Energy Directive. He has been a member of the cabinet of Connie Hedegaard, and he's now back in DG ENER, where he's mainly working on the Energy Efficiency Directive. And that concludes. My name is Thomas Nowak. I'm the Secretary General of the European Heat Pump Association, very much interested not only in the technology itself, but in the contribution this technology can have to a decarbonized energy system. And we will not talk too much about that today, but I'm quite convinced that this integration of systems and the connection of heating and cooling as services is what we need. And with that, I jump directly into the setting the scene part of this webinar. I shouldn't say that anymore. I've heard that somebody has protected the term, so we have to call it online seminar. So this online seminar, and we want to discuss how to transform the demand pattern. So this is not so much about the heat pump industry today. It's much more about the downstream part of this industry that is subject to legislation, that is subject to the perception of our end users, which are mainly installers, consultants, architects, planners, but also final consumers. And the challenge that we have ahead is something that I can base on a document that came out of the European Commission, the Energy System Integration Strategy. And this document foresees by 2030, 40% of all buildings to be heated by electricity. Now, I take it that we don't want to directly electrify them, but we want to apply energy efficiency first too. And if we do that, then it means efficient electrification using heat pumps. And 40% of Europe's buildings, let's assume that we have around 120 million buildings. The number is a bit unsharp, but I'm quite convinced that this is about the right direction. So 40% of these buildings means 48 million boilers, heating devices, heat pumps, and we are standing at around 13 million today. So 48 million heat pumps in the next 20 years, because some of the existing ones will break down. That means a growth rate of roughly 15% for the next 10 years, which even for me as a notorious heat pump optimist is quite breathtaking. And then we have a few things that are standing in the way of this. That's namely the way energy is taxed electricity is taxed much higher than gas and oil. We are still lacking a CO2 price for fossil fuel use. There are still fossil fuel subsidies. So these are some of the major pain points. But also, we are often lacking trust in the technology. We are lacking an ease of renovating a building. How do I do that if I don't understand what is the right solution for me? Who do I ask? Can I trust my installer? Is this industry not only trying to sell more electricity, and so on and so forth? And then the same applies to the manufacturers. How do we convince our installers that we are undergoing a big change in the technology that we install? What do they have to learn? What about upskilling? And after all, is all this affordable? There's a few other questions that are brought up. For example, probably the electricity grid will fail. I think that is something that we can solve by engineering. But the perception in the general public, that is what needs more attention. And that is what, if we can overcome the lack of trust or the uncertainty of the decision maker versus our technology, I think then we will move much faster than we are moving today. So that's the challenge, and I would like to start with Niels, who will give us an insight on what do the policymakers think when an industry approaches them and says, well, you know, we have a great solution for you, just give us your full support. Niels, please.
Thank you very much, Thomas, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Yes, I come to this as an engineer, but also as it happens to be a human being that has recently tried to the customer journey of getting a heat pump. I haven't succeeded yet, so I may come back to that. I think you are right, Thomas, that it's an immense shared challenge. There's a huge potential, but if things don't change from now, we certainly won't make it. I think from our perspective and my perspective as an EU policymaker, one of the challenges is that the EU is not very strong on some of the competence is not very strong on some of the key issues here at stake, namely taxes and skills. On energy taxes, there are common rules for minimum rates, but changing them requires unanimity, which is hard to get when we're so many member states. And the current rules really don't make much incentive in terms of changing to heat pumps. So it will be difficult if we don't change the way we make decisions around energy taxes to make much or at least quick progress there. The Commission that is now in place has announced its intention to review the Energy Tax Directive, but it does require that all the member states agree. On skills, again, linked to that's an area where we do try to help, but which is mainly in the hands of the member states. And it's something that's linked and set in the context of national education systems and social systems more broadly. And again, where we are trying to nudge the member states in the direction we see necessary, but where we really need their cooperation. On CO2 prices, we have a bit stronger competence, at least if we're talking about the emissions trading scheme, which is a new measure and which can be amended with a qualified majority. So CO2 pricing is something where the EU already makes a difference. And you will be aware that today the Commission announces its climate target plan later today, announcing greater ambition, increasing our ambitions, and outlining some of the ways we intend to go about that. And one of the ways we do intend to go about that is to look closer at and seriously at the option of including buildings in the emissions trading scheme. And so that would mean that heating fuels would also become subject to a CO2 price from a European level. But pricing is not everything, and I think we will fool ourselves and each other if we think that taxes and CO2 is going to do the job. There's so much else at stake. Availability of a skilled and trusted workforce, I think, is probably the principal challenge, and what I think is closest to the topic of today's webinar. And I can certainly say for my own little experience there that my customer journey started by asking an installer, and I was recommended that a heat pump probably wouldn't work for my house, which actually it would. It would be an option, but the traditional first go-to station, the traditional installer, he said no. So if I had not been quite insistent, I would not have gotten further than that. Secondly, when I then got an offer, it was 3 to 4 times the cost, investment cost of replacing just with an oil boiler, which is the current solution. So again, many people would drop out there on the price. But even that, let's say, finding somebody who could get an offer was also difficult. So we need to bring down equipment costs. We need to bring down installation costs, and we need to bring down search costs and hassle factors. And I think the industry has some homework to do there, because you're not really communicating to your customer, end customers, as I can see it. Thank you.
Yeah, let me show you my wound. You put your finger right into it. It's indeed true. I cannot contradict. This is absolutely true. We need to make it easier for the end consumer to take a decision. I've seen on your wall this nice drawing of maybe your house, I guess. And these are the type of houses that actually don't make it easier. And you need people that have experience in doing that. And we probably have not enough of them. And maybe we should even have competence centers for old building renovation, or single-stop shops, as they are discussed much at the moment. But I also agree with you that if the Commission announces now, if Ursula von der Leyen announces a 55% CO2 emission reduction target, everything will become even more challenging. Because we have a target for renewables and heating that is 10% for the next 10 years, so 1.3 percentage points per year about. And some of it can come from waste heat. The rest has to come from renewable sources. So heat pumps have to play an important role, and we are not doing enough. So I note down your points. We will come back to them in the discussion, and I would like to hand over then to the next speaker, which we have agreed to should be. Now I mixed up my list here. So that should be Oliver, and maybe Oliver, you can give us a bit of the insight from the challenge to transform installers, normal installers, to heat pump installers, or let's make it broader, to renewable energy installers. What is at stake there?
Yeah, thank you. I'm hustling with a laptop right now. Can you see my screen?
I see you. I don't see your slide. Now I see the slides, and they are not in full screen mode yet. So if you could put them in full screen mode, I guess now they're a bit bigger.
Here we go. Okay. So, yeah. To me, I need to be the bad guy today, I'm afraid, because I have a totally different perspective on the matter. Niels, you told us about your personal customer journey, and you told us about the first step that's gone wrong, your contact to the installer. And this is, in my experience, nearly everybody's first step. And this is the biggest problem, because you're a professional. You know what to look for, you know the prices, you know the taxes, but the problem was that the installer was a big gatekeeper. And as a matter of fact, that's all the time the case. The installer is not your best friend. The installer is a gatekeeper for your industry. And from my psychological perspective, you are more or less barking up the wrong tree. Because if you talk about taxes, about labels, about commissions, whatever, this is a really, really, really important part of the deal, but it's not the most efficient thing to do if the task is to get the installer on your side. And how you could get the installer on your side, I will tell you in about 3, 4, 5 minutes. I will give you a short presentation about what we did for Bosch, for example, because they had the same problems. But first of all, a little introduction so you can get a glimpse of who I am and why I'm talking here. I'm part of September. We are a psychological research institute based in Cologne, as mentioned, and we have one core, and this core is emotion. We write about emotion, we talk about emotion a lot, and we have very different kind of clients. Normally the blue chip brands in their industries, and so I'm a researcher and consultant, for example, for Allianz, for Google, for Telecom, for RTL, for Bosch in your case, and a lot of different other brands. And they all have one thing in common, including Bosch. They all take care of emotions a lot. And this is where we came into play. But there is one big difference between, for example, Google or Telecom and Bosch, the target group installers. It's not as simple talking to them about their emotions as it is with a more or less normal target group. Because installers don't know that they have emotion. They don't want to talk about feelings because they are sure feeling is something for their wives. So installers, this is my question I would like to throw in the room and to give one possible answer to today is installers are gatekeepers and installers do not like you. And why is that? Because you are trying to sell them cucumbers instead of emotions. This will make sense in a minute. Don't worry. This is our September cucumber for nearly round about 20 bucks. Anybody want to buy a cucumber for 20 bucks?
No.
I could ship them to you today. No, nobody's interested. Okay, but they are fair trade. They have an eco label. They are bio-based. They are regional. I know the guy who planted the cucumber on first name basis. And this is a special offer only for today. Now, do we have any takers now? And of course, nobody would do this deal because we aren't stupid enough. And no label in the world will change this. No taxation issue in the world will change this, because if there are less taxes, the cucumber will not cost 20 bucks, but 15 bucks, for example. Nobody would do this deal. But if you know how to steer people by emotion, I can make you buy a cucumber for 20 bucks. And I made the campaign to make you do it. Gürkchen, body and soul. Cucumber, what else? Obviously, this is a joke. But if you think about it, Nespresso, a kilogram normal coffee compared to kilogram Nespresso is 19.90, so 20 bucks for a cucumber. It's the same price gap here, and we are happily ready to pay this price. The price is not the issue. The issue is what you try to sell. And Nespresso is not trying to sell coffee. Nespresso is trying, or not trying, is selling emotions. And this is the biggest problem when we talk about your gatekeepers, your installers, because the question that is not answered yet is, what is the emotional story all of you need to tell or to sell, to be honest? And one cue could be a study we did for Bosch, and I will give you a little insight in this, because Bosch had in mind that the future, of course, is about smart home, about electronics, about the encouragement of the end customer, because the customer a few years ago had no idea what he's doing, but today he still has no idea what he's doing, but he has Google, so he's empowered a bit. The installers don't like that, just by the way. And Bosch had some brands, Junkers and Wooster. Old Junkers, for example, an old German brand, always belonged to Bosch, but they do not stand for these values. Junkers is not smart or end customer, liked by end customers, or has competence in the field of electronics. So Bosch had one very simple idea. Okay, let's just write Bosch on the heating system, because nobody cares about Junkers or Worcester. And they did a little quantitative study asking a few hundred installers in Germany at least, and everybody told the same story. I don't care, write Bosch on it. Junkers, Bosch, I don't care, at least if the money does not change. Huh? So Bosch did it, but it did not work. And this is when we came in place and we wrote some scripts how the brand change could be managed, how Junkers could become Bosch. And we wrote fake news, we would say, some newspaper articles about that. And we gave the articles as a reading to the installers. And then we measured, I don't want to explain this, this would be another hour. We are able to measure emotions while you look at a TV commercial, listen to a radio commercial, read a newspaper article or whatever. And these are not installers, but this is how it works. We hook you up with some sensors, measure your heart rate, your facial muscles, your pulse volume, and a lot of stuff. And then we are able to measure, to calculate what you are feeling. And we did this with installers while reading how Junkers becomes Bosch, a topic they are not emotional about, a topic they, if they are asked, do not care about. But then we see, for example, in this moment, where Bosch talks about the connectivity, the electric competence, the smart home, what the installers feel. They feel stress, mistrust, skepticism, no attraction, no liking, no emotional closeness. They hate it. But if they are asked in their faces, they just tell us, yeah, I don't care, I'm competent, I can handle this. But they feel totally different. They hate connectivity, smart home, and stuff. And the question is, why are the installers so emotional? And we found out why they are so emotional. And to understand that you need to know how a psychologist looks at a human being. When I see you, I see a lot of jumping Matryoshka dolls, because you are more than one person, so to speak. When you are a child, you are the inner little Matryoshka. There is lust, there is fun, there is grief, there is I want everything for free and I want it now, like little child, huh? Or a person on the internet, but that's a different story. And the other instance we are at the same time is our outer adult, because when we grow up, the little Matryoshka, the inner child, does not change. We do not grow up, but we become more and more layers, like onions, but this would be a stupid picture, so we talk about Matryoshka, the Matryoshka layers, and the inner child and the outer adult, there are two instances we are at the same time. And if you ask an installer or anybody else straight in the face, what do you feel about the taxes? What do you feel about smart home? What do you feel about renewable energy? They will give you a socially accepted answer, but not what they are truly feeling, because this is caged up in the inner child. So we did psychological in-depth interviews. So we put them on the couch for 90 minutes to understand the installer and its inner child. And the outer adult of an installer looks like this. And they tell us, yes, I like the electric stuff. I'm for renewable energy. I'm totally capable of installing a heat pump. Everybody should have a heat pump because it's better for the environment, and all of this rational reasons. But then when we go deeper, when we break them in the interview and get their opinions of the inner child, they look totally different. Because on the inside, this is an installer. The installer, his self-image, he's the knight in shiny armor. He's Prince Charming. Because when we talk about the daily routines to the installers and where he takes his pride, the job pride from, they all tell us the same story. They tell us at night, 3 o'clock, my emergency phone rings, like the bed phone, I imagine. And the client, who's always a female, is freezing because her heating broke down. And he jumps on his horse, rides to the castle of the freezing damsel, and makes fire. So more or less the most manly job you can imagine. And of course, they don't know about this self-image, but this is the beauty of the inner child. We don't need to know about ourselves to feel in a special way. And when you know that the installer in his heart or in his inner child is the knight in shiny armor making fire all the day and expecting the appropriate reward from the damsel, you know that it's a bad idea to tell them, hey, we take all the manly stuff you care about, the welding, the soldering, the riveting, which is conductive to the self-image, and we make this go away. We give you smart home, we give you plug and play. In this case, we give you Bosch. This is harmful to the self-image. So it's not about taxes. It's not about whatever stuff, any labels or whatever. It's about their self-image because they want to make fire. And your mission in the ears of an installer sounds kind of like that. We will take you, the installer, and we will make you from hero to zero. And good luck with that.
Whoa, that was an interesting journey. I learned something again, and I thought we had discussed so many things already, Oliver. I see also Niels smiling and Ed smiling, so let's see. I think it's a good handover to say we have the inner child in the installer. What about the inner child in the end consumer, Ed? I'm not sure that you have prepared that, but you are discussing a complete change of product. The end consumer is not buying a heat pump anymore or a heating system for that matter. It's just getting a service. And that has been a discussion for a long time saying, but who wants a heating system? I mean, do you really care for a boiler? Is that your party discussion? Like, hey guys, I bought a new boiler. Let's go to the basement and enjoy a drink over it. No, you do that with your electric car, but you don't do it with heating technology. So Ed, what can we learn from you? Heat as a service, is that working? Is that addressing some of the points that Oliver has mentioned from a different perspective, from the perspective of the end consumer?
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you very much, Oliver and Niels. Yes, it's great to be here today. And all about emotion. Yeah, it's about the emotion of how the installers are feeling as they're going through this experience of the low carbon journey. And importantly for us at the Catapult, we've been demonstrating how emotion is integral to the comfort experience of heat, and that's what heat as a service is predominantly about for the work that we've been doing. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our demonstrations at the Catapult and what we've learned and how it is going to help the heat pump industry enable a great future for them. At the Catapult, if you're not already familiar, we work with some amazing individuals who are delivering some great innovation to help achieve our net zero opportunity, and we're supporting industry across the UK for that, with a whole host of very impressive capabilities across digital, consumer research, modeling, really taking a whole systems approach to the energy system transformation. But I'm aware that we're speaking in Europe today, and we also have an international division in effect that's helping connect UK innovators to our overseas markets. And you can find out more about what we're doing there and how you can maybe be part of that if you're not already. If you just search our corporate website, Energy Systems Catapult, have a Google and you can find out about it there. So low carbon heat, it's horrendous. It's been talked about for a long time. What are we doing about it? But it can be fantastic. Don't think that the challenge that we're having on the penetration of the heat pump and low carbon market is going to stop today. It can continue because there are things that we need to try and improve on. We need to make sure that we can improve our low carbon heating systems. We have to make sure that these heating systems are easy to control for consumers, and they also have to be easy to install, as we're talking a bit about today. And this is at the front of center really of what the consumer is trying to achieve with their low carbon journey. But as I say, it can be a great thing. The thing is, we had a hunch on how to do this a few years ago at the Catapult, and we established a living lab to try and prove our hunch. And that hunch was that smart home and data will help deliver our low carbon reality. And even though smart home is a reality for the few now, it can indeed be a possibility for the many later. And we recruited and still work with 100 people in homes across the UK who have a multi-room level control of heat. We're currently upgrading these systems to be even more flexible and usable. And these people are working with a heating system, a standard gas boiler, and other boilers, and we understand how they experience heat, and that's been a lot of our basis behind Heat as a Service to date. Now, the beauty about this level of control for a customer and information that we get through that multi-room level heating control is that it's incredible, the preferences and the the emotions, as Oliver's almost saying, that you can extract from this information set. We have been working with these 100 people, and we've identified just fairly simply about 6 different heating preferences. Now, that's not to say that there are many more. There absolutely are, but there's a huge variance in how people like to be warm. But through the data, you can start to identify that. And even within the household, clearly you have different types of segments. But once they start to get that level of control, you also, as a provider, can start to understand better what that customer might want. And as that customer starts to understand their preferences and how they like to be warm, it opens up a new world of heat services, because once they have that ability, they can move away from thinking about how much they might have spent last year and whether that's in kilowatt hours, and they don't have to worry so much about how much they might need next year, but instead they can just start to choose to be warm, and they start to know how they can control that. And as a customer, you can begin to create a contract or understand what kind of contract you want for your comfort experience. And the overarching principle behind that is that once the customer starts to understand how they like to be warm, it doesn't matter what type of box is delivering that. As long as the customer is telling the provider what they want, you just need to make sure that you change that box to make sure it's giving them that comfort. Whereas obviously today, that decision or that confusion, that complexity is often very much with the customer, or they're just told by the installer what is best for them. But they still don't know if they're going to be warm and how warm they might want to be and how much that might cost them. But with a Heat as a Service, they might not care how it's delivered, as long as they're still they're agreed to be warm with a provider. So how have we done this? Well, we've produced a set of heat plans, and these heat plans are designed to give people that confidence that they're going to be comfortable, because we're offering them a number of warm hours. And you can see here, I've got this green contract that we offered in the Living Lab. And this particular customer has 65 warm hours. Now, that means that they can have 65 hours wherever in the house they want to be warm. And actually, number is based on their previous experience, and they've set that because that's what they most prefer. But they've also set a price for it, or we've set a price for them, but they've agreed that they want to pay £7.15 a week for it. And that price is also based on the cost to have delivered that heat in the past, which means about 11 pence per warm hour, which is a kind of miles per gallon measure. So the customer can easily compare this contract against another contract. Maybe there's another contract that offers them 75 warm hours for that same price, and they can see that that's more attractive to them for some reason if another provider can offer that. Once they've reached their 65 warm hours in that week, they can pay extra warm hours at 25p per hour. We offered this because we thought maybe those extra warm hours would start to be valuable to customers, and maybe the provider could earn a little bit more money from that. But the customer now knows they're getting 65 hours of warmth at the warmth they now like for £7.15 a week. And if they go above that, it's another 25p. And within our system, we're able to tell people how much of that contract they're reaching and when they start to pay more for it. But what's even more important at the back end of this architecture is that as a provider, with the data, you're able to know which homes might indeed be heat pump ready, because the data set can start to tell you which households might be cooling down more slowly or warming up quite quickly. And you can target those customers much more effectively and offer them a price that reflects that efficiency. You're also able to understand customers that might be having long heat periods of schedules, for example. So once you start to know the schedules of heat and maybe customers that don't make many adjustments to it, you know that they could be a great candidate for a low carbon heating system in today's world. So the customer is less risky and they are more guaranteed of their comfort. But fundamentally, these service plans can reassure customers. They make sure that you give the customer the offer of comfort, and they know that they can afford that running cost. So we explored this a little bit further, and we wanted to confirm how attractive heat plans, we call them heat plans, were with low carbon heating systems. And the graph on the left-hand side just shows how when we asked about 500 people who wanted a new heating system and we offered them a heat pump, whether they wanted to buy just the heat pump and buy that as a standalone package, or whether they were more interested in a heat pump with a heat plan, i.e. within a heat as a service contract that I just showed you. There was some explanation of the numbers, obviously, but the principle was that a lot more people wanted to buy a heat pump with a heat plan when it was bundled with it, about 80% compared to about 20% with a heat pump alone. Another great indicator is that for those people that were in the living lab, when we offered them heat plans with alternatives to gas, for example, with heat pumps, a vast majority of those were more open to having heat pumps, but with those that didn't have heat plans and weren't so familiar with them in the living lab, only about a third were interested in the alternatives. And the last indicator was that when we started to talk to people a bit more about how they might be impacted or start to respond to changes in the energy system and decarbonisation, most people, about 45%, were most positive about energy services compared to alternatives like home improvement loans or boiler bans or carbon taxes. So having an energy service was a much more appealing way of changing their energy system if they had to do that, their heating system, if they had to do that in the future. Just a couple more brief points is that with this data, you're able to, as a provider, as I said, know much more about each individual household and their building, and you know also when the customer wants to be comfortable. Together with local energy plans in a region, you're able to much more specifically design retrofit systems that are able to provide more customers with the opportunity for low carbon heat that suits that particular area. So together as a package, Heat as a Service is able to improve those low carbon systems, make it much more easy to control for the customer, and ensure that they're much more easy to install through the retrofit opportunities and the data that it provides. And that's why we believe that Heat as a Service is the great opportunity to help move forward low carbon heat. And the Living Lab is continuing to run trials and is open for business to help you as providers and manufacturers understand how to do it yourself.
Thank you very much, Ed. That was very enlightening to me again. And I would like to open the discussion between the three of you, in fact, not referring to my questions here, by asking, in your concept, you are bypassing the installer. So Oliver, do you think that the installer will like that? And then maybe afterwards, Niels, would that be something that you would consider if somebody offered you a service as heat, and then you wouldn't have to bother with all these details? Could that overcome both challenges? Maybe we start with Oliver.
So I think if you go far enough with the concept of Heat as a Service, I really like the concept, but you need to go far enough. For example, if I, as an end consumer, can rent my heating system, not buy it, for example. I don't know if this is planned, but looks like it would fit in. And if you could make it easy enough or get enough pressure to make the installer do it, it could perfectly work. Of course, the installer obviously will not like that. The installer will not be the little guy doing what the big service company is telling them. So it will be, it could be a big fight against the installer, and we shall not underestimate the power of the installer. The installer just needs a few seconds at the right moment to tell me, yeah, we made bad experience with this software as a service stuff and a lot of people freezing in the winter. I wouldn't recommend that, but if you want it, I will install it, and then it's gone, no matter how good the idea is. Yeah. So the installer has, at least in Germany and in UK, I don't know about the other countries, I didn't do research there, but I imagine it's pretty the same thing, has a big power. But if we get him on board by telling him this is the future, and you have a big masculine fire-making role in this, because the end customer is totally helpless without you, and we find the right tonality, this could work. I really like the concept, but I see the problem of the installer smashing it if we don't get him aboard. And of course, another perspective, the end consumer himself. I got a little hard fact when I just read 65 warm hours, because the psychology behind the home, at least if I'm not a single household, if I have a home with my family, of course, it's about protection, it's about security, and all this very simple but deeply linked in us stuff. So you had the solution with the extra warm hours, but the picture you need to sell me as an end customer is not at first the price, but at first not the comfort, but the security you offer. The service is more secure than a boiler, because the service, I learned, Netflix will never break down. My old DVDs are damaged, but Netflix will not break down. So if you tell another story based on the psychological needs of the end customer and the installer, this could be a great deal. Perhaps we should have a talk afterwards.
Maybe you want to answer directly, but I'd also I would be happy to listen to you and Niels also. What about you? I mean, what would that help you, or are you scared by 65 warm hours?
I precisely on that. It already made me. But 65, is that enough, or is that high or low? You know, I would have thought at least you should say by day, so you can compare to your day. You know, 65 hours is not a lot if it was is on a week. No, what happens in the hours that are not covered by the 65, and if you don't pay extra, what's the temperature there? So. But let's say on a more high level, I think it's very interesting, and I think what the merit of this has, it has the merit of taking, a better understanding of the customer needs into, as the starting point. Really looking at what the customer needs, and I think that is critical. The other thing, if as Oliver pointed out, if you can package this plan with renting or financing the heat pump so that you don't have to do the big upfront investment, then I think it'll also help. But I still think this will not be the panacea. Why? Because as Oliver also pointed out, these service providers, I mean, the heat pump still needs to be installed. And if there's a bottleneck of qualified, skilled installers on the market, that the available installers will still have to be, let's say, upskilled and convinced to embrace this technology. Otherwise, the service companies will just have difficulties finding sufficient installers and delivering on the demand. So I think you still need to go to the bottom. We still need to use the resources we have out there, but let's say bring them with us and make them wish to work for the service companies. Then the question becomes, how do you make it the dream of every installer to be employed by one of these new service companies? The second thing is on the pricing, because even though you could financing by having rental plans or financing a package with it, you can of course soften the blow with a big investment. But if you don't do anything about the equipment costs, I think there's still a limit. As I said before, when I got the offer for my house there, the offer was 20,000 euros, of which 10,000 euros was pure equipment costs. So that was for 2 units sold by the manufacturer of the heat pumps. And those 2 units, by the way, I could see on the internet that they could be sold elsewhere or bought elsewhere for 30% less. But when I raised this with the installer, he just dismissed me and said, "Go and find somebody else too." So the price of the equipment will need to come down as well, I think. And I think what you talked about in the beginning, Thomas, the immense scaling up is of course also something which allow us to expect from heat pump manufacturers that costs will come down, because if you have a perspective perspective of such a strong growth, there must be economies of scale and industrialization to harvest. We've had the same issue with the offshore wind industry. That a few years ago, the offshore wind turbines were very expensive and much more expensive than, what was very clear, that every single wind turbine, although they often look very much the same, they were always manufactured for a specific project, and which made them much more expensive. And the heat pump industry will need to, and I think you are further there than the wind turbine. I mean, it is standard products. I know many of them, but you will need to go even further. So I think the heat as a service is excellent, but we will still need to work on the prices and the costs, and we will still need to work with the installers. And by the way, very coincidentally, yesterday I saw that the Danish authorities have actually launched one of their a new subsidy scheme for a heat as a service, and it works the following way: service companies, they have to register, pre-qualify, and then they can get a subsidy, and then they offer to take out people's old boilers, install heat pumps, and sell heat as a service. So it's exactly spot on what you're talking about, Ed, and that was launched yesterday.
That sounds like a Energy Systems Catapult branch will open in Copenhagen very soon.
Love to hear. Yeah, that sounds like they need some great people there. I'm sure I can find out about that. So Thomas, I can not respond, but just build a bit on some of these points if you want quickly.
Please.
I think just first bit of clarification. It's hard to describe heat as a service in about 10 minutes. That's why we need great people like Oliver and his company to help promote it in the right way. But just for a small point of clarity, the 65 warm hours, I mentioned it's bespoke to each person. So it always depends on how you like to heat your home in the past. And that's what the data is telling you. So don't think that 65 for everybody. It's up to the customer to choose, and it's up to you to choose how you want it.
It's not about
and
the
it's a journey.
65. It's not about the 65. You could write 402. I'm stupid enough to not know how many hours a week has. It's about making it a package, and the opportunity. I have a very vivid inner picture of my kids freezing in their beds because I booked 2 hours, not enough hours. I don't care about the number of hours. I do not calculate. Our inner child is not smart enough for doing math. It's about the package. Yeah.
And maybe what I missed in the presentation is an explanation within the contract that you also have you can have a range of temperature that you might want. So you agree that it's between 18 and 22, or so you as a customer are never worried about your children being cold. In effect, you're buying the heating schedule that you love. Yeah, that's the principle. It's explained in a parameter of a warm hour. But there's more detail there. But you're absolutely right, Oliver. And heat as a service should certainly enable you to have as good or better heating experience than you've currently got, for sure. The point I was just you're going to say that it's maybe there's for installers, there's no reason why heat as a service is any different for them in the future. In fact, maybe it can make it better, because the information they get from the customer through some of the devices is helps them be much more efficient and understand exactly what the customer might need. So it maybe makes their job easier. And the last point I was going to pick up on, Niels, you're saying, yes, it's about the price and making sure the price is right. Well, maybe we haven't got the right price for some of our products today. But what Heat as a Service enables you to do is target those customers who might be prepared to pay that price, or at least you can communicate to them the subsidies that are available to make sure that they might want to buy it. It's about understanding those customers better, and a provider being able to target those customers more efficiently.
This is one perfect example for why I introduced myself as I need to be the bad guy today. I'm sorry for that, but I get the feeling the more I deep dive into the industry, the heat pumps and the renewable energy industry, the more I get the picture that you are fighting the wrong battles, because the fundament of knowledge about psychological knowledge is kind of missing. And we can feel this in little sentences like, it will make the installer's job easier, and that's a good thing. I heard that by big, very well paid people in different settings on leather chairs, steering big heating companies. And they told me the same thing you just said: we will make installers' jobs easier. That's not what they want. Imagine you are the knight in the shiny armor, and it's easy to slay the fucking dragon. What's the reward you deserve for that? None. A little handshake. Not the damsel jumping in your arms. It's not about making it easier. If we did a little twist, for example, in one heating system, we made the producer have a little metal box above the USB slot. Totally unnecessary. No need for that. The only need is that the installer needs to get his big machine and screw off this fucking little box because the installer can't find the USB slot. The end customer can't find the slot. So this is to man him up, and it works great. It's not about making it easier. Just one little example. Huh?
Oliver,
yeah. I mean,
I'm really amazed.
Sorry.
No,
installers are also quite different, like you and I. So I think, quite a lot of them like to get their big power tools out, but some of them also find dealing with customers quite hard. And maybe, you know, a gas boiler installer at the moment is too worried or complicated about the future of low carbon heating. And if we have to enable more than 10% penetration of the heat pump market, then we have to make sure that gas boiler installers today are able to install low carbon heating.
I'm totally with you. I'm just saying, if we find the right story, you will never again talk about 10%. You will talk about there are some installers not doing it. And this is
exactly the point. Ed, you said you have 100 homes. Oh, I understood 100 homes. You said 100 people. I assume it's 100 homes. Is that
That's
correct?
Right, yeah.
Okay, so 100 homes is not enough, because if we execute what I just told you in the beginning, this means 15,000 installations per day. Let it sink. 15,000 installations per day. Yeah. That's the challenge that we have, and it's actually even independent of heat pumps. It's if we want to do the energy transition, it means renovation jobs, it means smartening of homes, it means installation of technology. Can be solar thermal, can be the connection to a district heating grid. We have a question about that. Can be heat pumps integrated as hybrid systems. There are a lot of solutions. My key question here is, what triggers the urge for an installer to become more educated? And as a thesis, I would put up to say, if the end user asks for it more and more and more, will they not just skill themselves more? So if they have more people like Niels that say, no, this is too easy, I'm not buying your initial no. It reminds me of Monty Python, where they have this castle and they knock on the door and they open the door and they're like, no, and close it immediately. But what will trigger the installer to upskill themselves so that they are not the gatekeeper that closes the door of the decarbonized buildings, but opens that widely for the interested public?
That's the wrong question.
Oh, wait, before you do that, I want a positive one. Yeah. So Neil, what do you think?
Well, to be frank, I think in such cases, and if you wanted quick and large scale competition, and new kids on the block, you need let's say new players in the market that change the game, and with the new business models and new approaches, and but also let's say an approach that ticks the boxes that Oliver that has psychology and marketing clever integrated. So you need some to come and disrupt here. Or to put serious enough competition, because of let's say, as I said before, even if you have a smart product, it still needs to be connected to the hydraulic system. You know, you still need these old-fashioned, old school hard competences. You need somebody who can work on the piping and so on. And so they are needed, and if certainly in some member states there are not enough of them. So we can't just we can't also just compete them away. Somebody else needs to cut the pipes, but we need to make it attractive for them, I think, to join up with new approaches and work for service companies or join them. You make it sexy in a different way. Another thing I think is, and this is, by the way, in October the Commission will present the renovation wave strategy, which is about how we renovate buildings more deeply and quicker in Europe. And skills is part of the reflections there. And one of the dimensions of skills is also gender equality and gender balance, because today it's an industry where totally dominated by men. And I've certainly never met a female installer. And I think what's interesting also by some of the things we've talked about here is you could perhaps create new roles and for that would attract women to because the business model somehow is and the skills and competences needed would be more attractive to women to join and come out and sell heat to households and explain families why, or help them identify the right heat plan or whatever, you know. So I think that's an interesting perspective as well, and something worth thinking about. How do we make this a more gender balanced let's say field where we involve women and where women get involved in this?
With a bit of self-reflection, if I look at us here, we didn't do a very good job in manning this, in womening this, I have to say. So I will search for the similar setup with women only, and then we will see if the results differ significantly. Oliver, you said that that's the wrong question, but may I add to that? Will more women as installers solve the problem then? So what's the right question, and will it be asked by women and answered properly?
Yeah. Niels gave the right answer. So, but to the wrong question, because Niels did not tell you how the installers, how you can make the installers to educate themselves. That's not their job. It's your job. It's the job of the industry to get them educated. And I don't think that education is the problem. It's motivation, but that's a different topic. So it's not it is easier to say the installer needs to educate themselves, then they will understand the problem, then we'll install our solution, everything is fine. But that's not the way it works. Nespresso did not tell the people what good coffee is like, or tell them educate yourself so you will understand that our coffee is better. Just by the way, it's not, but different topic. So this is why I'm saying this is the wrong question, because it's the wrong attitude behind it. The attitude must be, how can we make them want this? So just a different setting. And to the topic of women in this industry, I actually would think this could be one part of the solution, because if I combine this with heating as a service insights, we have a psychological insight in the role of the genders. And for example, bad news, if I recommend Google who should tell bad news to the stakeholders or whatever, it always should be a man. A man should tell the bad news. Big box psychological research behind it. But if we talk about warmth at home and security at home and about home itself, there is a big quality for female representatives advising me how to get my home more secure, for example, or my heating more secure, getting more warmth in my home. This could be a totally different angle. I like that idea a lot. Nice. Perhaps they will not try to make fire. This could be a benefit too.
For sure, for the heat pump industry. I have a few fact-based questions here for you. Thomas Noll is asking, has there been ever energy as a service operated by a cooperative? Ed, can you say anything about that?
By a cooperative, I'm assuming that sort of means a group, whether it's a community group or a partnership group.
Yeah.
It depends how you define heat as a service. I'm sure there have been some equivalents, but the closest I can relate to in the UK anyway is a commercial relationship with EDF and passive systems that we're working with and supporting on a project, who aren't delivering heat as a service as I've described today, but are offering customers a low carbon heating system, a heat pump, a hybrid heat pump, for a fixed monthly price over a 7-year contract. And it's the combination of EDF as the supplier, passive systems as the control and the heating system in effect, together offering that service. So that's the closest I know, but I could go back to my colleagues who work more on the more community-based systems and find out, but I'm not aware.
Okay, and in the same direction, are there heat as a service solutions that are connected to district heating, maybe using also heating and cooling as a service?
Again, you see, it's currently a lot of talk and not a huge amount of action, which is where our 100 homes as a demonstration opportunity is so useful, because we can help people do this cheaply and easily to understand how to make this happen. There are a lot of projects trying to be scoped on district heat, and if anything, heat as a service for district heat is a great opportunity. It will help people be more reassured about having a variety of services within their local area, and rather than having a monopoly effect of a single provider. And it also might help people make that transition from an existing gas boiler, let's say, in a retrofit district heating system. So there's some great benefits for heat as a service and district heat, but nothing actioned to my knowledge.
And what would be the ripple effect, you think, from what you have done with 100 homes now? How can this be rolled out across Europe? And then I could connect that to Niels' statement saying competition will encourage installers to become more knowledgeable. So you could say there is a bit of a competition now between a single installer that tries to save the princess and the idea of providing heat that is not so manly, but we have find some women that do that, or men that think that it doesn't matter, we can also change. So there could be a competition from a new solution with the existing set of craftsmen, don't you think? And so now you have 100, but what's your multiplication plan for this?
Well, as a Catapult, we're a not-for-profit organisation, and we rely on government funding as well as private funding. So we're not here to necessarily make the changes, but advise and enable some of the changes. So there's a limit to what's in our control. It certainly does require some more, how do I call it? Kind of confidence, I guess, say from government on heat as a service itself, and enabling the policy, the regulatory, and perhaps the fiscal measures to enable it, because there are some challenges. But as the Catapult, we are expanding the Living Lab and upgrading it, as I say, to go beyond 100 homes and move into the thousands, which is certainly meant to act as a platform, a bigger demonstration platform, to start to set some of those policy and regulatory requirements. So that's fully active on the roadmap now, and we're open, as I say, open for business to help people work with us to do that.
Good. Well, thank you very much. Any other comments on this, Niels? Maybe would that be attractive again?
Sorry, I didn't.
If you would receive such a service, if we would have a living lab in Brussels, and Ed and his colleagues would ask for volunteers, would you be in?
Yes, in principle, yes.
And do you think this is something that should also be recognized in the renovation strategy? Is the renovation strategy, to your knowledge, looking at this at all?
Well, we have a broad range of issues to look at, but we're already promoting, and we've been promoting for years, energy services and the provision of energy services. And in the Energy Efficiency Directive, there's even requirements on member states to promote energy efficiency service and help create markets for them. But very often, even member states find themselves a bit at a loss as to how actually to go about that, and they meet these very, let's say, hard bottlenecks, roadblocks, and I think I've mentioned some of them. The equipment cost, there's a limit to what kind of cost differentials you can smoothen over, unless you, at least if you want to reach a bigger market. So the cost is really an issue, and then the skills. even member states are powerless if you have a shortage of people who can actually cut the pipes and drill the holes and put in the heat pump. It's so there are some very hard roadblocks that needs to be worked with, I think. And I think, for instance, what I know that the heat pump industry already has been doing has to be worked with solutions and designs so that you don't need so the installers can put in the heat pumps without intervening in the refrigerant circuits and so on.
Yeah.
And that's of course the kind of thinking you need, but I think you will need more of it because that in itself, the design, the requiring intervention of specialized refrigerant engineers and technicians, that it's a very hard limit on the capacity of the whole supply chain to actually deliver regardless of demand. And if you have that kind of hard blocks, what you will get is just very high prices or on people who in vain try to find somebody to do the job, and while waiting they instead go for a gas boiler. So you need to work on those hard skills and how to motivate the ones that are there and how to attract more to the profession, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think really we have to do this together, because if the installer is not doesn't find it attractive, the end user is overwhelmed by the confusion, then in the end, the energy and climate targets of the European Commission and of the member states and of us all in the end cannot be reached. So we will not get any further by pointing fingers. I guess not saying that you're doing it, but since you mentioned the cost differential, of course, it is always cheaper today to use fossil fuels because there is no CO2 price attached to that. So society is generously paying for the pollution that users of oil and gas are producing. But I understand, Oliver, that this is not what I should say because nobody cares. I give you all a last round of statements. So if we really want to look at the large deployment rates that we need from a psychological perspective, from a consumer perspective, what is your number one thing that has to happen?
Okay, to me, it's pretty simple. To me, the number one thing is stop trying to push cucumbers in the market. Start trying to pull or to elicit a pull effect by making the product sexy, not by making other products bad.
Good.
Mine would be understand what your customer's wanting, and you can do that through smart home, and Heat as a Service is a great enabler for that.
Thank you. And Niels, how do we get it?
I mean, this one thing is hard because there is no single bullet, but what we've heard today was certainly, I think, very good advice. And I think also, let's say, you need to, as an industry, figure out whether you're happy remaining a niche product in the renovation and selling expensive and few products, or if you want to sell many and less expensive products and do that by reinventing the distribution channel, basically the business model.
This is a very good closing remark I could have made myself, and I would like to take the opportunity of pointing to an extraordinary seminar that we have added, because we will make a virtual tour through Factory Zero in the Netherlands in 14 days from now, on the 29th of September, and look at what you could do if you want to integrate products into one box, make it easy and fast to install. I'm afraid, Oliver, one of the selling points is also to make it easier for the installer. But what we had in mind here, this is not me, I'm just pointing to it. What they had in mind, the guys that are doing it, they said, well, if the installer can sell 2 of these boxes instead of 1, and if he can cut costs by, I think it's something like more than 30% or 40% even, I don't have the numbers in my brain correctly, this will make it more attractive. So it's actually the decision is to say, no, we do want to go for a mass market, and we do want to create a downstream, a value chain that is actually fit for mass market, and all the things that you have presented today will play into this direction. Thank you very much for this very interesting discussion. For at least for me, it was super entertaining, and also I learned a lot. So have a nice day and see you soon, hopefully in person again. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.